Hi, welcome to Mercurious Being. I am Amy Jensen and I am outside today trying to toss things up a little bit in keeping with the Sagittarius full moon, which will be exact at 10:42 p.m. Central Time on June the 3rd. All right, here's the chart for it. We've got the moon up here in Sag, we've got the sun in Gemini, and we'll be talking a bit about Uranus and Mercury conjunction in Taurus, which will happen exactly the day after the full moon on June 4th. And Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. Mercury also has just, or will have just, on the 29th, May 29th, Mercury will have its maximum elongation as a morning star, so kind of heralding the ending of the past Taurus, Mercury and Taurus retrograde period. So it's Mercury is gaining speed and catching up to the sun. It's crossing a threshold, returning back to normal, quote unquote. However, the point of this time and the whole retrograde is not just to quickly return to normal. It is to take all the things that happened to us and not only happened to us. So April 11th is when the Mercury max elongation as an evening star occurred at 12 degrees Taurus. And now it's at 14 degrees Taurus at the morning elongation. So whatever has occurred within your consciousness, internally, externally, symbols, redos, rewrites, everything, really coming to this point where we take it all and we're getting ready to go out into the world and find external correlates to the internal processing that we've been involved in since April 11th. And we're making these connections into that part of ourselves that we're becoming, and maybe all of the work and the review you did pointed out, hopefully, clearly what is maybe not you or what is no longer you, but you're still going forward. I hope you can hear these birds. The crows are showing up today, honey. So we have some crow medicine happening. It'd be awesome if they came within camera shot, but hopefully you can hear that. Also, I just read an article the other day about the health effects of birdsong. And I mean, you don't need to read an article to know that, but also that kind of factors in with what I'm talking about is getting out in nature. Again, that's kind of the mantra every video, isn't it? But also just the effect of birdsong. All right, so the crow message. Looking for connections into what we are becoming. So again, not a time to go back to normal, even though Mercury is coming back to its normal speed and place, but just incorporating and integrating all of the insights and symbols and experiences that we've had. Let's see if there's anything else about that. And just being aware of this process allows us to assimilate it and transmute the energies gently and harmoniously. So add nature with a drop of awareness or a healthy dose of awareness to everything we do. Is a great recipe for life. Okay, so we've got Mercury at max elongation. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, and it June 1st, Mercury returns to the degree at which it went retrograde. So again, we're coming back, we're getting all systems online and powered up to go forward. But how we're going forward is not just to be like, oh God, thank God that's over, so now I can just go back to my daily routine of doing the same thing every day over and over and over again and letting time pass by as I do this. That said, Mercury conjuncts Uranus. It is conjuncting Uranus at this lunation, but it is exact on June 4th at 2:38 p.m. Central Time. So Mercury symbolizes the mind. Uranus is the higher octave of Mercury, so a higher mind. We're really connecting into a bigger mind. So it's very stimulating energy. It's a lot of mental stimulation. Could be distraction. There could be sudden insights and intuition hits. Anything metaphysical is great to study at this time. Scientific, metaphysical, mathematical, astrological, esoteric. So anything kind of unusual. So insights in those areas, unusual and exciting insights, maybe some brushes with unusual people or new ideas at this time. Mercury is also getting a quintile from Saturn, so kind of this creative aspect from Saturn. And as you know, Saturn is in Pisces, trying to give form to the formless. But also, so Saturn just gives form to everything. So like kind of lending a bit of a hand to take all the ideas and insights that we get with the Uranus-Mercury conjunction and then bring them into the body, because Mercury and Uranus are still in Taurus. So it's like the mind in body, imbued with the energy of bringing form to the formless. And maybe some inspiration on how to do this or how it could look in your life. There's a septile from Neptune to Mercury. So the mind in body, Mercury in Taurus, as opposed to seeing itself as self. Nope. Mind in body. I'm like, wait, no, that's not what I meant. My notes, sometimes my abbreviations lead to misunderstandings. So not opposed, an opportunity. So think about that a little bit. So I read that as the mind and body opposed to seeing itself as self with a capital S. But flipping that and knowing that I really meant former self, yesterday writing this self, it's an opportunity, the mind and the body, while this is happening, this everyday suchness, this everyday occurrence of ourselves in space and time in this earthly realm, also simultaneously having the insight and opportunity to see ourselves as the big S self, as part of that Neptune and Pisces self, that Saturn in Pisces, seeing form and formlessness, seeing ourselves as part of the ocean. But again, we're in Gemini, so the ruler of Gemini, Mercury in Taurus, this embodiment, but we're coming online in a different way, okay? So the Mercury is still in Taurus in the heart chakra. So maybe this out of blue, unexpected, the septile is kind of like this idea of perfect timing, the realization that you are all with a capital A, you are everything with a capital E, and everything with a capital E is you with a capital Y. You are in everything and everything is in you. We have Neptune and Pisces, kind of that right hemisphere of the brain, this spatial organization, geometry and music. And we have Gemini energy and Mercury energy is very left brain, very analytical, very discerning and placing and exactitude. Okay, so these are kind of, we're gaining insights from this whole season and really kind of taking all the experiences of the eclipse season into the skull brain and allowing the body brain to make sense of this and make connections, which is the connections part is like bueno, huge Gemini energy. Okay, so the Sabian symbols for this from Linda Hill. Gemini 14, because you always round up. Two people at widely different points are in conversation with each other by means of. So this symbol speaks of psychic and clairvoyant communication with others and the ability to be able to pick up on what others are thinking. You can communicate with someone, and it is not always necessary to be physically face-to-face or on the phone or emailing them. You can have bonds with people that are unaffected by distance or actually being in touch with each other. Let your heart tell you that you are always in their company and there is no need to feel alone. Keeping others in your mind and heart will communicate something to them, and probably they back to you. So there's something about keywords: conquering space and time limitations, psychic and mental communication, sharing ideas, the other person knowing what is felt or thought, being on the same frequency. The inharmonious keywords are blocking out psychic awareness because of fear, manipulating others by subtle means, and this manipulation thread is going back to, got a little bee animal here, going back to the first eclipse energy and all of that, clarity coming through mind and thought control, feeling very separated by time and space. So those are the inharmonious aspects of that. The Linda Hill Sabian degree of Sag 14 is a vast panorama of sand and time is unfolding. The pyramids and the Sphinx in their glory rise before the eye. This degree shows the power and strength of history and grandeur, along with issues to do with spiritual mysteries and intellectual records, and the buildings of grand monuments and empires. An interest in ancient civilizations often comes with this degree, or there may be the desire or need to establish some type of movement, or perhaps work at it or worship it. You may be working to build an empire, yours or another's, as this often implies pyramid selling and large economic structures. You may need a tour guide and a map and the determination to build things in exact measurements. So the harmonious keywords or thoughts: power of the past coming through, spiritual ancestry, big business and enterprises, predictions, profits, the desire to build a personal edifice, ancient languages and lost cities. The inharmonious aspects or keywords: slave labor, looting, enormity of big business, great treasures robbed by the greedy, monuments that belittle others, having a know-it-all attitude, and rich versus poor. So I think this degree, because Sag is ruled by Jupiter, Jupiter is still squaring, not exact like it was the last lunation, but still squaring Pluto. So there's still a little bit of this power structure check going on, and hopefully continuing to unfold. So that is all I'm going to say about that for now. Let's go on to the next page. So just coming into the idea, and I hope this lighting is okay. I'm just realizing the sun is moving. So again, part of the reason I chose out here is because I want to create new connections and I want to be more spontaneous, all in line with the Gemini thing, because it would be easier for me to go down to my room, pull out the blankets for sound, and know the lighting is going to be right. Usually somebody pulls up when I do something outside, some delivery truck or propane delivery. So there's a little bit of that going on. But I just want to stress the importance of doing things differently during this part, this next chunk, always, but mindfully at this point. So going back to this expanded idea of the mind. Let's see if I had anything on my last note that nope. And its potential. So just as connections, neural connections within the mind are real, connections outside of the mind through mind are real. The idea of the group mind came forward, of preconditioned thought, of pre-existing circuitry within our minds, whatever we are wired into through our beliefs. So this is a great time to examine beliefs and that circuitry and discern where they came from. Dissect and analyze the programming and circuitry. And so then I looked up the etymology of program. From the 1630s, it was a noun and it acted as a public notice. From the late Latin programma, which meant proclamation or edict. Pro meaning forth, and graphene to write. Those are the stem words. Use as the word like a concert playbill, began in the year 1805. In 1923, it was used as a broadcasting presentation term, and then as a definite plan or scheme, method of operation prepared or announced beforehand, began the use of program in the year 1837. In 1945, it became used for computers in the computer sense of a series of coded instructions which direct a computer in carrying out a specific task. In 1963, the term program was extended to animals in a figurative sense to train or behave in a predetermined way. And then all it said is of humans by 1966. So Mercury conjunct Uranus hopefully can disrupt the programming. So giving yourselves and ourselves an opportunity to realize, like, hey, I don't even like this. I don't like that. Why am I doing this? To upset and interrupt habits and usual ways of doing things. So it's an invitation to restart your system, to reboot your mind computer, insight into the wiring of the computer, the mind computer, and that's saying that neurons that fire together wire together. So it's experiences, thoughts, feelings, sensations, all trigger neurons to form a neural network. Okay, so over time, then anything that triggers that whole group of neurons fire. So we want to unwire that and rewire. Of course, this is kind of the whole neuroplasticity thing, and you can look into that on your own. I am by no means an expert on this. I just am drawing this in. And of course, that's the ability of the nervous system to change its activity in response to internal or external stimuli by reorganizing its structures. And I looked up that Einstein quote, the insanity is trying to get different results with the same actions, totally paraphrased. However, it's not an Einstein quote. Found that out today. So misattributed to Einstein. So, I mean, there you go. How much more misattributions are in our minds? Okay, just going to leave it at that. Think a new thought. And of course, as I say that, it's not always as easy as that, is it? It's not always as easy as, yeah, just think a new thought. Just let that go, right? Because we have habits. Move my mug there to weigh the papers down. We have habits, biology. We have entrenched behavior and surroundings. I would say, given the privilege to see this in action recently with an older person who had lived somewhere a long time, and we assisted moving this person. And when you realize when someone is old and they've lived somewhere for a long time, their memory is really contained in the space. A large part of their memory is just habit at that point, and contained in the structures of their apartment or their home and their patterns, their things. You go into the kitchen every day and make coffee. You go here and you get your mail. You do this at a certain time of day. You do that at a certain time of day. And then when that's disrupted, how that can just disrupt the memory faculty. So the memory itself isn't as good as one would be led to believe, just because of the habits. So the memory installed surrounding us. Okay. So the remedy for that is stimuli, new surroundings, different routines intentionally, different foods. I've noticed that with our pets. I had been giving them the same food for a long time and they were bored and listless, and just changing the food up a little bit. It's like, oh, that's something different. It's something exciting. It's like, it's duh on me, right? Not to be hard on myself, so I'm rewiring that too. But like, it was very obvious in a cool way, and I'm very grateful for their help with that insight. But so we have to laugh about it too. I mean, please use humor. We'll add that to our recipe, right? A huge dose of humor to this, and compassion. because we are human and we do fall into habits. So anyway, different foods. Another idea, use your non-dominant hand or non-dominant leg for different activities. Brush your teeth with your other hand. You might notice when you go up steps, because I notice because of one of my knees, I always go up steps a certain way. Just do it another way. Take steps 2 at a time, 1 at a time. Anything that's a little bit different. Of course, I just got this image. You can walk sideways or like do a sideways things like a crab or a Scorpio, and then you could really get into some unusual territory with Uranus, especially if you live in a small town like I do. That would get people talking. Okay, awareness, a huge dose of awareness. Okay, so listening to, again, like thinking about how by rote, R-O-T-E, one does things. So again, that habit by rote, and I looked that up, which means by heart. So you do something by heart. I know that by heart, like a piano piece. I know that by heart. I know that by rote. And I looked that up. It's from the Old French, which is like the root of root, like taking a route, or a Latin rota, R-O-T-A, which means wheel. And then I thought about the wheel of life, the wheel of birth, life, death, and rebirth, the wheel of samskara, or as Kriyananda's teacher Shelley used to say, well, maybe Kriyananda said it, but some scars, you have some scars, you've got karma, those little clunks in the wheel. And Shelley G used to say, get off the wheel of karma, the reactive wheel, and get on the stick. So get on the rotation of consciousness around your spine. So being aware and being conscious. Okay, so, and at all times, as the planets move through the heavens, the macrocosm, they are moving through the microcosm, and I know I've touched on this in other videos of our chakric system. So currently at this full moon, the sun is in our throat chakra, Gemini, and the moon is in the sacral chakra, or Sagittarius. And then I kind of switched gears a little bit, just going into the Gemini a little bit, and thinking of Gemini's rulership of the nervous system, and obviously making connections. The nervous system is not only the central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord, but it's the peripheral nervous system, which is the voluntary movement of the somatic nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system, the involuntary movement of like the heart and the glands and smooth muscle. And then to bring the autonomic nervous system down a level to the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest, which relaxes and soothes, and the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight, flight, or freeze responses. So really at this time, one thing that Gemini can do is like overstimulate the nerves, and then we also have this Uranus influence. So with all the possibilities of like disrupting the programming and rewiring the brain, it can be Vata aggravating. So too much air, too much ungroundedness. So doing practices that promote calming in the parasympathetic nervous system will be very helpful. And like I said, nature, always. Calming breath. And this doesn't have to be anything fancy. If you know breath work, if you've got a teacher, yoga teacher, you can be directed in that. And I won't go into that in a YouTube video, but maybe in a class sometime live, so we can do this together. But just coming into your natural, gentle breath, and even just the meditation of watching the breath roll into and roll out of the body. Oh, I'm glad. I was almost going to skip a whole page. Okay, but the calming breath, which is natural and gentle and unforced, just the observing of the breath as it goes into and out of the body, can be a huge, very simple, very safe, effective way of calming yourself down. Also, finding the resonance within yourself. and with others. So humming and singing, mindful movement, play. I always think of Brené Brown when I think of play and her being like, look it up. I'm sure there's some clip of her talking about it online, about her just being like, what is this play? What are these people doing? What are these wholehearted people doing? You know, she just was coming at it from that angle, and her humor in that situation. But giving yourself time to play, time to be outside, maybe time to be with animals. So like, again, adopting a different rhythm other than your fallback habitual one, and then slowing down, purely slowing down. And of course, sometimes even with meditation and prayer, of course, always nice to calm one down. But sometimes in meditation, the inner critic voice can come. So just allowing that a little time and space, and maybe again a walking meditation or something where your eyes are open and there's some mindful movement involved, can help get away from the inner critic. Or just feeling into it and naming it and letting that resolve can also help. So the possibility of rewiring the circuitry and getting back in touch with your inner resonance is heightened. It's also scary. It can be scary because you're unsure of what and where you are without the existing program. There's an idea of going against the grain, which is, we're on big Uranus turf with that one, right? Going against the grain. So again, anything that you're doing that's different from the ordinary, and this will either make your new ordinary better because you've kind of increased your real estate, right? You're doing things a little differently. It'll upgrade or help you find a completely new mode of operating, more in line with who you are. Because Uranus, of course, would also be that individual energy. At your core, at your danda, the spine, the central pillar of self within you. So this Sag full moon energy is this energy of looking forward and looking back into traditions, established religion, established and institutionalized thought forms, long-term study, long-term planning, but also looking ahead in the Sagittarius fashion of aspiring, of looking toward future goals, looking toward shooting that arrow of thought and possibility and optimism into the future, far, far off. You can't even see with the eyes where it goes, but you hope and plan with the mind where it lands. And allowing yourself the space in which to dream big, or just to dream at all, without shutting yourself down with those thoughts of, well, that's not possible, and that can't happen, and you can't do that because somebody else didn't do that. Okay? Letting those go. The optimism and possibilities of Sagittarius, bringing that expansiveness to this. And I believe this is Lao Tzu. I looked it up, but could be falsely attributed to him. My rewiring is already occurring. So Lao Tzu, journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step, with one step. So throw out the old maps, delete the existing GPS, and learn the terrain by looking, by listening, by watching. Connect the symbols, follow your inner guidance, be open to new and different external guidance. I just had to look over there at Chipmunk, just joined the chat. So again, I'll look up a little chipmunk spirit animal after this. So don't do things by rote. Find a new route. Do them not by heart, but with heart, and with a newly discovering mind. All right. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you at the next lunation.